Welcome to the Good Talk, where we remind you of the joy of life, the love of God, and the possibilities that lie ahead. Pete and Jordyn here.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Fantastic.
I love January.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
You're thinking weather, aren't you?
Yeah. It's cold and gray and just, I don't know. It feels like such an abrupt re-entry into the real world because you go from all the fun holidays packed into 3 months and then January happens.
Yeah. You know our friends up north, though, are laughing at us when we talk about cold and gray.
That I know. That's fine.
But it's all perspective.
It's all in context.
Yeah, it's all perspective. Yeah, what you're used to. Yeah, I get it. Well, the thing that I like, and I know we've talked a lot about it over the past couple of weeks, I like setting goals and dreams in the new year. And I realize, I get it, it's every day is a new day, right? But there is something in our culture about the new year.
Sure.
We did our annual thingamadoogie. What do you call that?
Date night where we
we don't do our annual. We have an annual date night.
Once a year.
So once a year.
Super special.
No, we do date nights regularly, but
this
goal
is
setting. Our annual goal setting date night.
Yeah, we do it every January.
We go out and we use this worksheet this year, which is a little more fancy than what we normally have. But I have this system. I've had this system since college for setting goals, and I like to set goals in the different categories of my life. So the categories were physical, vocational, financial, spiritual / self-growth, and then relational or family. And then setting 2 or 3 goals in each area, in each category of my life. And that's what we've been doing together the past couple of years.
Yep.
And so we go out and have dinner together. Like last night, we went to a coffee shop, had cup of coffee, or you had your Diet Coke. Yes. So you had to drink coffee.
I know. Don't send me your hate mail. I know aspartame is going to kill me.
We go to these really cool coffee shops, and she's like, "Do you have Diet Coke?"
And in Nashville, it's so horrible because there's the best coffee ever here. But whatever. And
then we kind of laid out our goals for the year. You got anything you want to share?
I mean, mine are not going to be interesting to anybody. I have my typical physical one is just exercising super regularly, eating healthy.
Yep.
Those are super boring. I do have personal career goals, which I won't share publicly.
Yeah.
And then I have some self-help stuff. I want to take a video editing course. I want to learn a new skill. I love that
idea, by the way. That surprised me last night.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something really fun and empowering about learning new skills. So I try to learn one new skill every year. This past year was podcast editing and all of that jazz. But yeah, I just want to sharpen that and continue to work on it. But yeah, that's just 3 of mine. What are yours?
I got a bunch of the regular ones of working out 5 times a week, eating healthy, that kind of stuff. But one of my most exciting ones actually this year was in the family category.
Yeah.
And I want to write a book to my 3 boys.
Yeah, I love that idea.
I've been wanting to do that for a while. I've written a couple books, but I want to write a book just to them, just about a little bit about my life and some of the mistakes I've made and lessons I've learned, and hope that somehow maybe it helps them not make some of the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And also give them some insight just into my life and why I do the things I do, why I believe the things I believe. And
yeah. Hopefully they read it if you write it.
They probably will not read it right now, and I'm okay with that. I prepared myself for that, but I'm thinking 10 years down the road, this might mean a lot to them.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool one. I love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So we set our goals. Y'all should totally do it. If you don't have a husband or wife to do it with a friend, do it with your mom, dad, with anybody, with your kids. It's really kind of fun. And it's also, when you do it in a group, it holds you accountable. And, Pete and I have done it every year. And ironically, one of my goals that I put down this year, Pete was like, "Jordyn, that's been on your last 2 years
it has.
of your goals."
And that's okay.
But it's good for it to live, outside of yourself. So I would definitely encourage you guys to do that. It's good. And
then after that, we went to Mellow Mushroom and had pizza and played bingo.
Y'all, we're 98 years old. We set our goals and then we go to play bingo.
On Wednesday nights at Mellow Mushroom, if you live in the Franklin area, you're more than welcome to join us sometime. They have bingo. And it's so awesome. You play 5 games of bingo. Is it though?
Yes. Is it awesome?
It's free to play. I'm not sure. And if you win, you get a $10 gift certificate.
We've won once, y'all, and we've gone for well over a year. And it's only $10.
I won a couple times.
Okay, it's $10. It's not
that
like,
you win
wow.
per game, though, per game.
We've never won more than
That's
one
half
game
your
in a
meal.
night. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So don't go to bingo night. You can just play bingo in the comfort of your home.
I don't know why, but I love it.
You do.
I love it. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So, I mean, this is a thrilling podcast, so it's to be a great time for me to remind you to continue to rate and subscribe.
Yeah. Share this. This is just so enthralling, I'm sure.
It really is.
Rate, subscribe. We try and cover all kinds of topics here. Last week, we talked about distraction towards like getting ultimate fulfillment in your relationship or your job. And this week, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to kind of talk about, I'm calling this is episode 12, by the way. I'm going to call it Don't Shoot the Wounded.
Yeah.
Based off of a phrase I used to hear when I was growing up. But you're right. Last week, we were very practical. We talked about distractions. Oh, it's cool. I was on a coaching call today with a guy who runs a business. And he was talking about, we talked about the top three. Because we talked about distractions are often what attract you towards the good and you miss the essential.
Yeah.
So we talked about those top three. And he talked about how he was using that in his company now with each employee to help them establish their top three.
Big three.
And I was like, that's cool.
It is cool.
So anyway, last week was practical. This week, not so practical.
This week's like kind of more of something you and I are passionate about / we experienced ourselves. So, and I actually have not heard, I mean, I know this topic, we've talked about it a lot, but this is going to be new to me too. So
yeah.
Fresh ears.
Growing up, I used to always hear this phrase, don't shoot the wounded, right? And then it was used often inside the church in a negative sense, people being negative towards the church to say the church always shoots its wounded. And what the idea behind that was that when someone had messed up, the church often gave up on them or kind of walked away. And I won't get into this personal story, but I experienced that personally in my family context growing up. I saw that happen to a church that we were a part of. And so I was just kind of thinking a little bit about that. And yes, you and I are very passionate about grace and extending that to others. But I was thinking about, I think for a large majority of my life, I really missed this. I really missed so many opportunities to extend grace and mercy to people. Not intentionally, I kind of missed it. So if you know anything, and I know you know this about my personality, is I don't like to insert myself into places I haven't been invited.
Yes.
So I'm never going to walk into a meeting I haven't been invited to. I'm not going to show up at your house unless you have blatantly given me an invitation to come over to your house. Right? And that's probably true about your personality as well. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back, it's my personality probably combined with a fear of rejection. Like the idea of showing up somewhere where I'm not wanted would destroy me. Yeah. So it's always safer for me to only insert myself in the situations where I know that I'm welcome to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now translate that over, because when I think about how I've done ministry for a long time, I think it's really impacted me. For instance, I never wanted to insert myself into somebody else's crisis. So if I heard about somebody in the hospital, I wasn't the kind of person who just, I'm going to show up at the hospital and be with them. Mm-hmm. I always thought to myself, if they or their family want me to be at the hospital, they'll call me and ask me to come to the hospital, right? Mm-hmm. I would have never just shown up. I think about, and this is where it's probably most like detrimental, if I had a friend in my life who had screwed up, messed up, maybe they made a really poor choice, maybe they lost their job, maybe their marriage was unraveling, maybe there's some kind of crisis, I'd usually sit back and hope that they'd reach out to me. And I knew if they did reach out to me, I was going to meet them with nothing but grace and love, right? This wasn't a judgment thing. It was just me kind of sitting back. And I call this, now looking back, I had a polite indifference.
Yep.
I thought I was being polite. I thought I was being kind by kind of playing neutral until they reached out to me. But the fact is, I watched a lot of people, probably the overwhelming majority of people, never reached out because they just suffered in their shame alone, because shame does weird things to you, right?
Oh, yeah.
It just does. And I thought to myself, I'm sure, people who'd messed up, I'm sure they're surrounded by people who are helping them through this, or I bet they just don't want to talk about it right now, or if they want to talk to me, they'll reach out to me, they know how to get a hold of me. Those are all the things I told myself. But looking back, I think it was completely false. In fact, that assumption probably robbed me of some of what could have been some of the best ministry moments that I would have ever had. Because here's the deal. When you screwed up and when you failed at something miserably, or you've disappointed a bunch of people, you didn't live up to somebody's expectations, like shame comes flooding into your life. And again, shame does some really weird things to you. And at the root of it, it makes you feel like you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. Right? It robs you of the confidence you need to approach people and ask them for help. In fact, it's like you're already, if you're experiencing a tremendous amount of shame, it's like you're on emotional, like, life support.
Yeah.
And you have this fear. If I were to share this story with one wrong person, it would literally be like pulling the plug.
Yeah.
It'd be like emotional suicide. So I think I might even told part of the story in the first episode. I won't bore you guys with the details, but for about 8 months after I had resigned from my longtime ministry job, I'd been through a divorce, I felt a tremendous amount of shame. And for those 8 months, you've heard me tell the story many times, I would go grocery shopping at 1 o'clock in the morning, like when I knew people wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see people. I was scared to see people. I didn't have the confidence to see people. I was worried about being judged. I had, again, just no confidence. And for months and months, I walked around with my head just hanging low. I could not make eye contact with other people. I was emotionally fragile, would probably be the term that I would use there. Mm-hmm. And now I think back to all those years of ministry where I was expecting the people in my life who'd experienced a public failure or even a private failure of some kind, I was expecting them to reach out to me if they needed me, but they couldn't. Even on their best days, that was too much of a risk. And what they didn't need was my polite indifference. They didn't need my silent prayers. They needed me to rush into their life and speak words of love and grace.
Yeah. And can't you remember, because obviously, you and I both separately and together have been through some crazy stuff and just experienced hate, experienced indifference, and I think you and I both can pinpoint those very few people in the different seasons for each of us that did come to us, and for me, it was mostly just my family. I had a couple friends, but like the people who you thought would come running to you didn't. And it's almost like, even still, I know this is wrong because like you said, a lot of times people don't even realize that they're doing this, but in the back of my mind, some of those people still in my brain, I tell myself, they don't approve of me. They've never said that. They just haven't said anything. Yeah. So you just assume that silence is disapproval. And it breaks my heart to know the times that I may have unknowingly done that to somebody else.
And you have. And I have.
Yeah.
Dozens and dozens and dozens of times
exactly.
because of what I call polite indifference. Yep. You didn't want to overstep a boundary, or you didn't know what to say. And so you said nothing at all when they needed you the most. Yep. And I go back to the story of the prodigal son. Did we talk about that in the very first?
Yeah, we did.
Well, I can't believe we're only on the 12th episode.
I know. It feels like it's 100.
But in that story, the prodigal son, Jesus says that when the father sees the son, that the father runs to the son. And most of my life reading that story, I've always thought, well, that's totally backwards. Why would the father run to the son? Should be the one that takes off sprinting, running when he sees the father who has given and sacrificed and loved him his whole life, right? But you'd think that if you had never experienced shame. Mm-hmm. But what if you've experienced shame, is the fact is the son couldn't run to the father. He didn't have that kind of confidence, right? He came crawling back in hopes, according to the story, that he might just be a servant in his father's household. Mm-hmm. That's the best he thought was going to happen. A pastor friend of mine was telling me once that in biblical times, servants and slaves weren't allowed to make eye contact with their master. Mm-hmm. And since the posture of the son was that he wanted to come back just to be a servant, more than likely he didn't even feel like he could make eye contact with his dad, right? And that same pastor friend said that he's always kind of pictured this, even though this isn't a detail that Jesus shared about the story. He always pictured the father taking two fingers and, putting his fingers underneath his son's chin and just lifting his eyes up so that they made eye contact. And I love that. Like, I just love
That's cool.
that image, that moment, that grace, that it's okay. Look at me. You know, you're my son. And when I think about what I want to commit my life to, I think that's it. Like, I want to run to people who are overwhelmed with shame, and I'm going to put 2 fingers under their chin, and I'm going to lift up their head and say, look at me. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's all right.
Yeah, because all that does is initiate healing.
It does.
Like, if you think that your silence or that your, opposition towards somebody is actually going to somehow teach them a lesson, I can promise you the lesson it's teaching them is nothing productive. It's not, if you have some goal for them in your mind, like, it's not going to go there with the silence, with the hatred, with the judgment, with any of that. I've seen that so much in my own life. Like, when I felt the unconditional love or undeserved just presence of somebody, that is really when I was like, oh my gosh, that's what God must think of me.
Yep.
That's how God must treat me. And until then, it's really hard to put God into a category of unconditional love because you've never experienced it, right? As soon as someone gives you that gift, and, for a lot of people, that's their family, is that for a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah.
But when you give that gift, you're helping them understand how God sees them. And that to me is just like, what a gift, to be that in somebody's life, to just like a reminder, and to not sit in the back silent watching them, knowing, that they're not okay. And a lot of times, like you said, we do that from a good place.
Yeah.
But if we could just be so intentional to reach out and just, it's so easy to do, right? It's so easy to do, especially now on social media. Social media can be horrible. You can use it for hateful things and
plenty of you do.
Words. Yes, freaking this week. No, but if you can use it for that, you can use it for good.
Yeah,
and I just think, man, do it, guys.
Yeah. And we're not talking about having a lack of boundaries here. There's a place for boundaries. We've talked about that before. We'll talk about that more this year. You've not talked about, we want to do some topics around the idea of boundaries because it's so important. We're not talking about crossing unhealthy boundaries here.
No, and I think it's for people that you have relationship with.
Yes.
Like, this is not someone who you've watched on Instagram from afar and you think that you should speak into their life and you don't know them. No way.
Yeah.
That is a boundary. We've also experienced that. If you do life with this person or have done life with this person, or, would consider them a friend, or family for that matter, that's the person. Yeah. We're not crossing boundaries of acquaintances or people you think you speak life
but
into.
I actually do. So I do sometimes cross those boundaries because I just feel, when we were talking about divine interruptions last week, like, there have been times in my life now that I see somebody publicly who just goes through, again, my assumption used to be always that I'm sure there's somebody that's reached out to them. I'm sure somebody is talking to them. Somebody's helping them do this. And these days, I don't make that assumption anymore. So, like, of a story that happened not too long ago. There was a politician who messed up, right? And, national news. It's on CNN. It's everywhere. They messed up. It became public. They had to resign. Their marriage looks like it's in shambles. It was a bad situation. Yeah. And I just reached out to them, remember?
Yes.
And I was just like, hey, you don't know me, but I've been through some stuff, and I just wanted you to know it probably feels like it's all over. But I still think there's hope here, and if I could help in any way, I'd love to.
Yeah.
And they actually responded. And we had coffee, and I feel like I was able in that situation to run to them with some hope and love and acceptance.
That's true.
But that's usually it's going to be somebody in your life, right?
Yeah. Usually if someone's going to invite you into their shame, it's usually if they feel some sort of safety with you. And I think just inherently this man knew who you were, and we're able to trust that. But yeah, you're right. There are definitely moments, where you can do that, but that was a very interesting story.
Yeah. But that's what I want to do. I want to run to people like that. I want to remind them, hey, your sin does not make you second class.
Yeah.
I want to remind them that they're not what they've done. That doesn't define them. I want to encourage them by telling them that I've been there and I've walked around with my head, hanging low. Brene Brown says it this way. She says, empathy is the antidote to shame.
Yep.
And she goes on to say the two most powerful words when we're in a struggle are, me too.
Yep.
Me too. We all have people in our lives right now who are desperately in need of healing. They don't need you to tell them what it is that they should have done right. They don't even, I love my friend Bob Goff says this, they don't need you to hold them accountable. They need you to hold them close. Right? In that moment, is there a time for accountability? Absolutely. Sure. In that moment, what do they need though? They need you to hold them close, because the only meaningful thing that we can offer another person is love.
Yep. You can't hold someone accountable if they don't first trust you.
Yep. The only meaningful thing that we can offer people is love. Not advice, not questions about their choices, not suggestions for their futures, just love. They don't need our polite indifference. They need our engagement. They don't need our judgment. They literally need to hear, me too. Right? Me too. Hey, I've been there. Me too. You screwed up. Me too. Right? You're embarrassed by some of your choices. Me too. You don't feel worthy of love and acceptance. Me too. You don't want this screw up to define the rest of your life. Hey, me too.
Yep.
Me too. I have been there, yet by the grace of God.
Yep.
I've experienced people's love and belonging. Most importantly, I've experienced God's love and belonging, and you will also experience people's love and belonging and God's love and belonging.
Yep. We said this in the first episode, but I love the way that you put it. You can either join the party or not. It's going to go on either way. And I love that, that's the picture that God paints, is like, we're throwing a party. If the son came home, we're throwing a party. If you want to be the person that's pointing the finger, you can do that. But, what is that ultimately going to change? So I love that picture, and I've not been perfect at that at all in my life. But I think once you experience shame, as painful and horrible as it is, I really can see how it's been used for the good in both of us to be able to kind of see that. So,
yeah. I think there's so many proactive ways that we can offer this to people. Literally, in that very second you were saying that, I felt convicted. I was thinking about a friend of mine right now that I know is just drinking too much. And I could come at them, and this is how I've been thinking about coming at them, is kind of sit down and saying, hey, I think you're throwing your life away, right? But the reality is there's a hurt, there's a pain, there's something they're trying to cover up there. Yeah. Why not approach it from hey, the only meaningful thing I can offer you right now is love and a listening ear. And let's instead of talking about behavioral modification and what it is that maybe you need to stop doing right now, let's go back and talk about, where do you not feel loved? Where do you not feel accepted? What's driving this? How can I be here for you in the middle of that? Yeah. And we started this episode by talking about our goals for 2021. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change a few things, because I want to add in there, especially in that area of relationships this year, is just meet people with love. Like, as the only meaningful thing I can really offer them is my love, and hopefully God's love through me. And I want to do that. I'm going to do that proactively.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. I love love.
I love love.
No, I think it's our heartbeat, and man, it changes everything. I think a lot of times I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I feel like people have had bad experience in church or with religion or with faith because of the very foundation of not being met with love. And that's how Jesus intended everything to be, is to be met with love and starting with love. And I feel like I sound like a hippie right now from the 70s, but it is so simple, but it's profound, and it's hard to do at all times. But the concept of love in any situation wins.
It does. And to chase after the people that are hiding, because we've all hid before. And it's just a natural human reaction. When you've screwed up, we saw this with Adam and Eve, right? All the way back to Genesis. They hid. Right? They ran from God. Peter, when he denied Jesus 3 times in the New Testament, he goes back to fishing. He goes back to his old habits. He goes back to his old identity. Like, we all tend to immediately feel like we're not worthy. And so we can't wait for those people to come to us and say, I need help, I messed up. We got to go to them.
Yep.
And chase them with nothing but love and acceptance.
Yep. I love it.
That's what I'm excited about for 2021.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome goal. And just sometimes it just takes being super intentional with it. Like the thought of it, you know, it's not a lot of times you don't purposefully ignore people or just pass by people's circumstance, but I think we just have to be super intentional to have eyes to see that. And, you know, you've talked about a lot lately, like a gratitude journal, starting your day with that. A couple years back when I was doing some of that stuff, but also just kind of reminders in the morning, I started with some of that, like meet every day with kindness and love. And when you do that, it's like in the grocery store, you're seeing it. In the drive-throughs, you're seeing it. When you see your neighbors, you're trying to be and act in that way. And I feel like in this year, if we're just able to say, I want to be intentional with loving people, you'll start to see the people that are hiding.
Absolutely. Man, oh man. It is good. Will you hold me accountable with this?
Yes.
All right.
Me too.
Good. Let's go out and love somebody.
Let's go love everybody.
Just love on
love everybody.
That's where the boundaries come in, right there. We need some boundaries.
Yeah,
well, I hope this has been helpful to you guys. We'll leave you with this week. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May He smile on you and be gracious to you. May He show you His favor and give you His peace.